Hello guys, gals, non-binary pals, and waterfowls. It's me, Big Mike. If you've seen the title, did you know what this video is all about, fam? And you know my channel is no stranger to UFOs, or UAPs as they're now called, unidentified aerial phenomenon. Okay, so UFOs were changed to UAPs, and UAPs did mean that, but now UAP means unidentified anomalous phenomenon. So I did my last video on this subject back in February when there was a rash of UFOs appearing throughout North America, and mostly over Alaska and Canada and such, in the wake of the Chinese balloon incident. But holy hell, fam, over the past couple of weeks or the past month or so, there's been a lot of major stories that happen regarding UFOs. And what's really interesting is that these stories haven't just been limited to the UFO community, but they've touched the wider mainstream audience. And at least one of these stories, perhaps both of these stories, have been reported on a global scale. So what I want to do in this video is that I want to discuss these two stories. And if you're familiar with this subject or you're interested in this subject, then there's a good chance you've probably already heard about these stories. But I'm going to retell these stories, I'm going to give some insight, and I'm going to try to give some clarification from both sides, those who accept it and those who are skeptical. And in the end, I want to give my thoughts on what I think the implications of these stories are. So the first story I want to discuss here is the Las Vegas UFO. Now before I get into telling this story, I just want to point out I'm going to attempt to show footage of some of the things I'm talking about while I'm telling the story. Now I'm not exactly sure if I'm going to be able to get that footage past YouTube's copyright system, but even if I can't, I'm going to be linking videos in the links below to videos that do show this footage. So the story starts with an object that was glowing green. And this object was seen falling from the sky. And minutes later, a Las Vegas family called 911 fearing for their life. They told 911 that they had seen 10-foot beings that were definitely not human walking around in their backyard. And one of the key witnesses, Angel, reported there was something in his backyard, and then when he looked at it, it looked blurry. His backyard looked blurry. Not his vision, but his backyard looked blurry. 45 minutes later, after calling 911, the police arrived. Now, when the police arrived, they told the family that one of their officers had seen something as well. After which, they proceeded to check the property and then the neighborhood, talking to neighbors, stopping people who were driving down the street to ask if they saw anything. After checking the property out, the police didn't see any beings, but they did notice there was a giant circle in the backyard. Now the family was obviously startled and were quite unsettled by this whole situation. But what's really interesting here is how the police reacted.
If those 9-foot beings come back, don't call us, all right? Deal with it yourself. I ain't dealing with that.
At some point later, police installed cameras on the property to keep an eye on it. Now, there's not been a reason why that's been given. Some say it's to monitor to see if any of these beings return, or it could be there to protect against the media or to protect against any civilians who may come to try to check out the location, because it is private property. Also, the family reported seeing black vans with people dressed in black suits watching them. And that's essentially the whole story. So what follows is going to be a couple of points to either reinforce some parts of the story or to explain away some of the others. Now, in regards to the green glowing object falling from the sky, that's well attested. It was caught by the cameras of several different houses in the area. It was also caught by a police body camera. It was seen by several eyewitnesses, including one police officer. And lastly, the American Meteor Society confirms that the object was seen from Utah all the way to California. So there was something definitely there, but what exactly, we don't know. Now moving on to the circle the police reportedly saw in the background, some people who were looking deeply into this story searched the location on Google Maps and found that the circle in the family's backyard was actually there and has been there well before this event took place. So whatever happened that night did not cause that circle. And there really was a black van with a man inside dressed in all black watching the family. An investigative reporter has come forward and stated that was him. Early on, there was some skepticism involving the cameras being placed there by the police. Some skeptics have claimed that police do not in fact do that. However, it's been confirmed by police that they in fact did do that. And lastly, one major issue involving cameras and footage is the footage released from the police body cams who showed up to investigate the call of the family. Now, one major issue here is that part of the footage has been censored, and the police department said that it's due to it showing private property, the place belonging to the family. However, some people who work in law enforcement have come forward and said that is in fact not something that is normally practiced. So why was the body cam footage censored? Now, I don't have an answer to that question obviously, but that's a damn good question nonetheless. And it's also worth noting before finishing this story is that the police believe the family. They see no reason to doubt the family, and as far as reporters go, every time that they talk to the media, which hasn't been a lot I'm told, they all say the same thing. But that's pretty much it for this story. The next story, and by far the bigger story, is the story of the UFO whistleblower, David Grusch. Now, David Grusch is a 36-year-old Air Force veteran. He was a high-level intelligence officer. He had worked for AARO, AARO, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. He was also a veteran of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, and he was in charge of handling the nation's deepest secrets. He also worked with the UAP task force. This alleges that the U.S. has a UAP retrieval program, but he and his team was denied access to it. And he claims that it's a program that retrieves vehicles that were created by non-human beings. He also alleges that the U.S. has quite a few of these ships or vehicles, both functional and damaged. He also claims that the U.S. has recovered quite a few alien bodies as well, or pilots as he calls them.
You are saying to the human race, for the first time, an official intelligence representative at a high level from the US government is saying publicly, we are not alone.
We're definitely not alone. Absolutely, the data points empirically that we're not alone, yeah.
Do we have bodies? Do we have species of
Well,
non-human?
naturally, when you recover something that's either landed or crashed, sometimes you encounter dead pilots. And believe it or not, as fantastical as that sounds, it's true.
Rather interestingly, he discusses what he believes to be a logical fallacy in many people's thinking of aliens. He says the common way of thinking, the belief that just because their technology, their science is more advanced, then they're more ethical or more moral. When he says that may not be the case, and he says that while we will likely never understand how they view us or how they see us, he believes at best they're indifferent, as he said that they allowed numerous things to happen to us without interfering, without protecting us, without saving us. At worst, they're malignant, allowing harm to come to us, or maybe even causing harm to come to us. And rather interestingly, he theorizes that aliens may not necessarily be from outer space, but rather they may be from a higher dimension. Grusch filed a whistleblower complaint with Congress and gave Congress classified information because in addition to believing people should have a right to know what's going on, what their tax dollars are going to, he found several ethical issues that he felt needed addressing. Grusch alleges that the U.S. has been behind a disinformation campaign that has targeted the American public for decades. He also alleges, and I realize I'm using that word a lot, but I just want to use that word and I want to use the word claim until proof comes out one way or the other. He alleges that many people have been harmed by working on the vehicles due to the materials they are made from. They are made, he states, from higher elements on the periodic table, which tend to be radioactive. And being in close proximation to radioactive materials isn't good for your life expectancy. He also alleges that the government is taking advantage of this technology, and he believes that it could benefit all of mankind, like it could help us with so many of our issues, like our energy crisis, transportation issues, world hunger. And he believes that information, that science, that technology should be, it should be given to academia, to science around the world, so that we can study it and that we can improve our way of life. And he also claims that the government gives at least some of the recovered technology to a private sector company for free to study, and so they can develop technology in which said company turns around and sells the end result back to the government. And he believes that is highly unethical. Now, with that out of the way, I wanted to start looking at and weighing David Grusch and his claims. First, we'll look at the criticism, and then we'll look at what is in his favor. Now, he has been criticized, or rather his claims have been criticized. Now, that's not surprising whenever something like this happens. Skeptics tend to criticize this, as they should. Claims should be scrutinized. However, what's surprising about this situation is that he has been criticized on both sides. Skeptics point out that he did not share any corroborating evidence. There were no images or documents to back up what he says, and he claims that all such evidence is classified. We may perhaps get to see these at some point in time if they're used in the congressional hearing, but I'm not sure about that. But as of now, we haven't seen anything, and his critics, or those who criticize his claims, say that in such situations, it's always said that the evidence is classified. Now, the second point of criticism from skeptics is that they claim that Grusch didn't see any of this himself, that he's relying only on secondhand accounts, things that were told to him by other people. And Grusch has admitted to this himself. He was pretty upfront about that in the interview. Now, what's been by far the most shocking of the skepticism or criticism of David Grusch and his claims that I've came across has actually come in from the UFO community. And it's shocking because you wouldn't expect that. Now, full disclaimer, again, I'm not a member of the UFO community. However, I've seen some information being shared by older members of the UFO community, and they're viewing David Grusch as a possible psyops, that it's being used to spread disinformation in the UFO community. And this is as a result of a sour taste left in their mouth due to something that happened in the 1980s, perhaps 70s, but I think 80s. They cited an individual by the name of William Leonard Moore, or Bill Moore, as being a precedent for such a thing. He was accused of spreading disinformation in the UFO community, and even to such extent, he tried to cause a leading figure in the community to have a nervous breakdown due to his disinformation campaign. Now, this is why these older members view David Grusch and his claims with skepticism. Now, with that skepticism and criticism portion aside, let's turn and look at the things that are in his favor. Well, firstly, when this news story broke, many media outlets, journalists, and reporters scrutinized his resume, and it all checked out. He is who he says he is. He's been called a highly trustworthy individual, and he has a prestigious reputation to risk. So he's not just some random person. He's not a random farmer. He's not some random, grunt or pilot. He's somebody with an actual reputation and career to risk. Another point is that he made his claims under oath and is committing a major crime, perjury, if lying. Also, the inspector generals have called Grusch's complaints both urgent and credible. And other people in the military and intelligence communities have come forward to vouch for him. And lastly, and this is a bit more alarming, is that people in the military and intelligence communities have also come forward to give similar accounts. And as a result of Grusch's actions and his filings with Congress, there's going to be a congressional hearing in July on the matter. So what do I think about all of this? Well, there are two big things here I want to discuss. Very similar, but two big things nonetheless. Firstly, as time progressed, since maybe 2015 or 2017, it seems like the government has become little by little, inch by inch, more willing to discuss such phenomenon. There was first in 2015 or 2017, there was an issue of the Navy or Air Force, investigating these UAP, the most famous of which being the so-called Tic Tac UFO. And this was there was a hearing done by Congress on that issue as well. As time progressed, it seems like they're more open to talk about this type of stuff. And even now, when you look at these two stories, whether you agree with these stories, you think they're real, you think they're 100% true, or you think they're bogus, you think that it's fiction, you think these people are crazy, or you think it's a mixture of the two. One really interesting thing to look at here is that the media is starting to take this seriously. It's starting to be discussed much more openly. Whereas, maybe 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago, a major news outlet would not have been discussing this. Anybody discussing this would have been viewed as a conspiracy theorist. They would have been, viewed as a whack job, a quack, no pun intended. And there may be something to that trend. I don't know what, but there may be something to that trend. Secondly, this is also the very first time that such a high-ranking person in the U.S. government in the intelligence field has made such claims. There was one ufologist who was interviewed in a newscast, and he said he believes by the end of the summer the president is going to make an announcement that we are in fact not alone.
I believe we'll get a confirmation this summer. That confirmation is what I call disclosure with a capital D, the formal acknowledgement by heads of state. It will be the most profound event in human history, and we will enter what I call the post-disclosure world.
And I don't believe that. I don't think that's going to happen. Well, at least not in the near future. But looking at the trend of how easy the government is getting with, or how comfortable they seem to be getting with talking about such things, it's possible. It's definitely possible if such things are occurring, I believe. But I'm not so sure they are really occurring. Now, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Now, in the case of David Grusch, now, we just have to wait and see. Now, in such a situation, I don't think we should, rush out and crucify the man. At the same time, I don't think we should take his word as gospel either. I think we should just wait and see. Now, the story of the Las Vegas family is an interesting one, because while there has been no hard evidence, something was in the sky that night. Something definitely was in the sky that night. And there are elements to that story that can be debunked, and there are also elements that are corroborated. So that's what really, really makes that story so interesting. So I don't know. I'm out on this one, fam. I'm really not sure where to go with this one. But it's going to be an interesting summer. I'm looking forward to July, hoping we can find something out, one way or the other. And no matter which way this goes, I think this is going to be something special. I think it's going to be something special. Because this is going to be the first time something this big on this level has been discussed. Will we find something out? I don't know. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you find these stories believable? Do you disbelieve them? Do you think maybe there's some truth? Do you think I'm a quack? I mean, I'm a goose. Geese don't quack. We honk. Honk, honk, honk. But all jokes aside, please let me know what you think. Thank you so much for sticking around, and please like this video if you liked it, dislike it if you dislike it. If you really enjoy my content, please subscribe and turn your notifications on. Until next time, fam, remember, just be yourself and you'll be awesome. Peace out!